I told him to stop. But if I'm being honest, I didn't mean it. Not deep down. Not in the part of me that had been starving for years. Because in that moment, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt seen. Not as a mother. Not as a wife. Not as the woman who keeps the house running while dying slowly in silence. I felt seen as a woman. A woman with skin. A woman with needs. A woman who hadn't been touched like she mattered in so long, she'd started to forget what it felt like. You ever feel like that? Like you're surrounded by people, but somehow lonelier than you've ever been? Like you could scream into the room and nobody would even flinch? That was my life. Waking up next to someone who didn't notice when I cried. Making dinner for someone who stopped tasting anything I made. Smiling in public so nobody would ask questions. Dying a little bit more every night when he rolled over, back turned, like I didn't even exist. So when someone finally looked at me, really looked at me, when someone listened, laughed, lingered, I should have run. But I didn't. I let the moment hang. I let the silence stretch. I let the closeness linger a second too long. And that's all it takes, you know? A second too long. They say the worst betrayals don't start with sex. They start with a look, a laugh, a touch you pretend was accidental, a whisper you hope no one else hears. That's how mine started. Not with a bang, but with a breath. And it haunts me, not because I didn't know better, but because a part of me still craves it, still goes back to that moment in my mind. Like a wound I can't stop touching. It's been 3 years. 3 years since that night. But every now and then, I still hear his voice. I still feel his hands. I still wonder if I had told him to stop and meant it. Would he have? Or was I always going to cross that line, the moment someone finally made me feel alive again? If you've ever found yourself in that space. In the in-between, caught between loyalty and loneliness, between what you have and what your heart screams for, then you know this story isn't just mine. It's ours. And if you've never been there, keep listening. Because sometimes, the most dangerous things don't come with warnings. They come with warmth, with understanding, with the very thing you didn't know you were dying without. So stay, listen, because the story, it doesn't go the way you think. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where the silence speaks and the shadows confess. You won't want to miss what comes next. I was the good wife. The quiet one, the one who knew her place. I learned not to ask for too much. I cooked. I cleaned. I made sure the kids were bathed, fed, loved. I memorized his coffee order. I ironed his shirts. I kept the house calm, predictable. And in return, I got silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that fills a room like fog. Heavy. Still. The kind of silence where you start to doubt if you even matter. He wasn't cruel. He didn't yell. He didn't cheat. He just stopped showing up. Emotionally. Physically. He'd come home late. Tired. Distant. Dinner on the stove. Me in the kitchen. He'd walk right past me like I was furniture. At night, we'd lie in the same bed, but it felt like 2 separate worlds. His back to me. Always his back. And when I'd reach for him, just to feel something, he'd grunt. Turn further away. Some nights, I'd cry so quietly I'd choke on my own tears. And he never noticed. That's who I was. That's where I lived. A perfectly tidy house. A full fridge. 2 kids who adored me. And a man who didn't see me anymore. Then came Jordan. He was like a nephew to us. Family friend's boy. He used to come around when he was a kid, playing video games with our son, helping out with errands, calling me auntie back then. But somewhere between then and now, he'd grown into a man. 24. Tall. Gentle. Always looking people in the eyes when he spoke. And unlike my husband, he listened. He noticed things. He'd ask if I'd eaten. He'd say, "You look tired, are you sleeping okay?" He'd laugh at my jokes. He'd stay back to help me clean after dinner. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing dangerous. Not yet. Just little things. Little kindnesses that started to feel like lifelines. Little moments that made me feel like maybe I still existed outside of chores and schedules. And slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice at first, those moments started to mean more than they should have. I started waiting for them, looking forward to them, replaying them. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about cheating. It was about being seen, being acknowledged. He'd walk into a room and my chest would tighten. Not out of guilt, but out of relief. Because for those few seconds, I felt like a woman again. Not a ghost. Not a machine. Not someone who used to be loved. Just a woman. Still alive. Still capable of being noticed. That was the beginning. And looking back, maybe it was already too far. Maybe the moment I started feeling more in 2-minute conversations with Jordan than in 10 years with my husband, maybe that's when it all began to unravel. It was a Saturday. Cold. Quiet. Rain tapping against the windows like a steady drumbeat. The kind of rain that makes the whole house feel slower, softer, lonelier. The kids were out. My husband had left early for a meeting he didn't bother to tell me about until the last minute. So it was just me and Jordan. I was in the laundry room, folding towels. Still in my robe, hair pulled up, no makeup, just the version of me no one ever really sees. The undone version. Jordan walked in, holding a half-eaten apple, leaned against the doorframe like he'd always belonged there. He didn't say anything at first. Just watched me fold. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You always wear your sadness like perfume, thick, but no one ever mentions it." I froze. Not because I didn't know what he meant, but because I did. Exactly. And no one had ever said anything like that to me before. Not even my husband. Especially not my husband. I laughed. Awkward. Tried to brush it off with a joke. But my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From being seen. He stepped into the room. Sat on the edge of the dryer like it was the most natural thing in the world. And we talked. About nothing. And everything. Music. Work. Childhood memories. He told me about a girl he used to love who never looked at him the same way he looked at her. And somewhere between the third story and the fourth laugh, I felt something shift. The kind of shift you feel in your stomach. Like when you're leaning too far over a ledge and you know it, but you don't step back. At one point, he reached for something. Can't even remember what now, and our hands brushed. But he didn't pull away. And neither did I. Just a second. Maybe 2. But long enough. Long enough for a silent question to hang in the air between us. And neither of us answered it. Not with words. Later that night, I crawled into bed beside my husband. He was already asleep. Or pretending to be. Either way, his back was turned again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. Replay. Touch. Replay. That sentence, "You wear your sadness like perfume." He saw me. Not the version I show to the world. Not the mother. Not the housekeeper. Not the wife. Me. I didn't sleep that night. My body was still in bed, but my mind was back in that laundry room with the rain. The silence. And his hand, brushing mine like a question I wasn't ready to answer. I knew it was wrong. The way my stomach flipped when he walked into a room. The way I found myself checking the clock, wondering if he'd be dropping by. The way I'd pause at the mirror a little longer before going downstairs. It started small. I changed my shampoo. Put on lipstick, just because. Wore that blouse I hadn't touched in years. The one he once said looked beautiful on me, when my husband didn't even notice I'd cut my hair. And still, I told myself it was nothing. Just attention. Just kindness. Just warmth. I wasn't looking to cheat. I was looking to be noticed. There's a difference, right? That's what I kept telling myself. That it wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about love. It was about not feeling invisible anymore. But even as I said it, I knew better. Because every time my phone lit up and it was him, I felt it. That tiny spark. That secret smile. At first, it was innocent. A meme. A joke. A funny story about the kids. Then it shifted. Late night messages. Can't sleep. Wish I was there right now. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you married someone who actually saw you? And I answered. Every time. Every word. Because deep down, I was starving for it. For connection. For affection. For presence. The kind I used to have. The kind I thought I'd never feel again. He sent a heart emoji one night. Just one. No words. And I stared at it for 10 minutes, like it was a confession. Like it was a door opening. And I didn't close it. The next night, he texted, "I wish you were mine." My heart dropped. But I didn't tell him to stop. I didn't say, "This is wrong." I didn't say, "I'm married." I didn't say, "Please don't." Instead, I stared at the message. And I imagined what that would feel like. To be his. To be someone's again. To be wanted like that. Then I turned off the phone, laid beside my husband, stared at the wall, and whispered to the dark, "What am I doing?" But the answer never came. Just silence. The same silence I'd been living in for years. And somewhere in that silence, the line blurred. Between right and wrong. Between fantasy and need. Between loyalty and longing. The line didn't just blur. It vanished. What started as small talk became long, late-night conversations. I'd be curled on the couch, phone in hand, whispering through the dark while my husband snored beside me. Jordan would ask me things no one else asked anymore. "Are you happy? What did you dream about when you were younger? Do you even remember what you want?" And I'd answer. God, I'd answer. Like my whole life depended on someone hearing me. We told each other things we had no business saying. Things that felt too intimate to speak aloud, but too heavy to keep to ourselves. And then came the night he stopped by, unannounced. Just for a few minutes, he said. He'd forgotten something he left last week. But he stayed. We talked in the kitchen. The lights dim, the clock ticking, and silence. That kind of silence that holds its breath, waiting. Our knees brushed under the table. Neither of us moved. I reached for a glass. He reached too. And our hands met. He didn't let go. Not this time. And neither did I. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He leaned in slow, uncertain, like he was waiting for permission I wasn't brave enough to give with words. And then it happened. His lips touched mine. Soft, quick, but enough. I gasped. Not out of fear, out of shock, that I felt it. In my chest, in my gut, in every part of me that had gone numb. He pulled back, eyes searching mine. "Tell me to stop," he said. I should have. I could have. But I didn't. I can't, I whispered. And with those 3 words, everything we were holding back broke loose. That night, the kitchen became something else. A place of confession, of release, of betrayal and hunger and need, all wrapped into one moment. His hands knew how to touch me in ways my husband forgot. And mine remembered what it felt like to want. The house still smelled like my husband's cologne. His coat hung by the door, his shoes by the wall. But it wasn't his name I moaned. It wasn't his arms I melted into. It wasn't his breath on my neck. It was Jordan. Jordan, who knew when to pause, when to ask, when to just hold me. And I let him. All of him. All of me. No second thoughts. No regrets. Not in that moment. Just heat. Just breath. Just the terrifying relief of feeling again. Afterward, we didn't speak. We just stared at each other. Both of us knowing we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. And neither of us tried to go back. It was supposed to be just another trip. 2 nights. Maybe 3. My husband packed his bag, kissed the kids on the forehead, and left without kissing me at all. No eye contact. No warmth. Just a door closing. I watched his car pull away from the window. Felt nothing. No sadness. No relief. Just silence. Later that evening, Jordan came by. He said he wanted to check in on the kids, bring them snacks, keep them company. But I knew. We both did. The kids fell asleep fast, movie on, bellies full. Their laughter still echoing in the hall as I cleaned the kitchen. Jordan didn't leave. I didn't ask him to. I poured wine. He helped me load the dishwasher. We talked like we always did, too long. Too close. Then the storm came. Heavy rain pounding the roof, wind brushing against the windows like it wanted to come inside. I lit a candle. The lights flickered. He said I can stay, in case the kids wake up scared. I nodded. And that was it. No big moment. No dramatic choice. Just quiet agreement between two people who had already gone too far to pretend otherwise. We sat on the couch. The space between us vanished. And without a word, he kissed me. Not rushed. Not guilty. Like he meant it. Like he'd been holding it in. My body remembered. My skin, it came alive. Like it had been asleep for years and someone finally turned the light back on. And when he paused, just for a breath, I whispered, "Don't stop." I meant it. Not because it hurt, but because stopping meant returning to reality. To a husband who didn't see me. To a house that had been empty for years. To a life that had been running on autopilot. I begged him not to stop. Because in that moment, I felt whole. Not broken. Not forgotten. Not invisible. I felt wanted. We didn't sleep. Not because we didn't try, but because something bigger than exhaustion held us in that bed. Held us in that night. And in the quiet hours of the early morning, I woke up with my head on his chest. The candle was still flickering on the dresser. Rain still tapping the glass. And that's when I saw it, my wedding ring. I must have taken it off. I don't even remember doing it. But there it was, sitting on the nightstand like it didn't belong to me. Like it was someone else's life. Someone else's promise. And I just stared at it. This tiny band of gold that once meant everything. Now it just looked foreign. Like it had nothing to do with the woman I was in that bed. The woman tangled in sheets that didn't hold guilt, just release. I used to believe betrayal came with sharp edges, with shame, with remorse. But sometimes it comes with quiet, with soft hands, with someone whispering your name like it's a prayer. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a cheater. I felt like a person coming back to life. The morning after felt too still, not peaceful, just hollow. The kind of stillness that follows something you can't take back. Jordan kissed my shoulder before he left. Said, "I'll text you." I nodded, eyes on the floor. And when the door closed behind him, it felt final, even if it wasn't. The hours dragged. I moved through the house like a stranger in my own life. I washed the sheets, cleaned the kitchen, put on a smile for the kids. But inside, I was unraveling. He texted that night. Just, "You okay?" I saw it, stared at it, locked my phone. He texted again the next day. "I miss you." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't miss him, but because I did. Too much. And I didn't know what to do with that. What have I done? The question looped in my mind like a song I couldn't mute. I thought about the wedding ring. How light it felt in my hand. How heavy it felt on my finger now that it was back. I couldn't look at my husband without flinching. He didn't say anything, but he looked at me differently. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe I was the one seeing things differently now. Our routine stayed the same. Dinner, TV, bed. But something in the air had shifted. If there was any intimacy left between us, it was now buried, 6 feet deep beneath my guilt. Jordan kept texting for a while. Then less. Then not at all. Until one day I opened Instagram and saw him smiling. With her. Some girl around his age. Long hair. Bright laugh. Hand wrapped around his. He looked happy. Carefree. Untouched by what we'd done. And I sat there, phone in my hand, heart in my throat. I broke everything, for a taste of being wanted. And now, I wasn't even a memory. He'd moved on. But I was still here. Still in this house. Still beside a man who couldn't see what had died between us. Still pretending to be whole. And every night I'd lie in bed, listening to my husband breathe beside me, wondering how I'd ended up so far from the woman I used to be. There are moments that replay in your mind, not like memories, but like warnings. I find myself drifting back to that night more than I care to admit. The way his hands felt, the way my name sounded in his mouth, the way my body responded like it had just remembered how to be alive. I can't undo it, and if I'm being honest, a part of me doesn't want to. That part. It whispers when I'm alone. It reminds me how it felt to be held like I was worth something. To be kissed like I mattered. To be touched like a woman, not a routine. And then the guilt comes rushing back. What kind of woman does that make me? What kind of wife? What kind of mother? I look at myself in the mirror, not to fix anything. Not to apply makeup or check for flaws. I look because I don't recognize her anymore. There's a hollow in her eyes. A quiet ache in her expression. And I reach up, fingertips brushing my own cheek like I'm trying to remember who I was before all this. I begged him not to stop. And now I beg myself to forget. I try to go back. To pretend. To pick up the pieces of a marriage that's been cracked for years. I put on the dress my husband once liked. I cook his favorite meals. I ask about his day even when mine feels like a silent scream. I even reach for him at night. Try to curl into him. Try to feel something. But it's not the same. It feels like I'm cheating on myself. Like loving him again would mean betraying the part of me that finally felt something real. How do you go back to pretending once you've tasted the truth? How do you sleep beside someone whose touch feels colder than your regret? Am I selfish? Or just human? I ask myself that question 100 times a day. And I still don't know the answer. Have you ever reached for something that was never meant to be yours? Not because you wanted to break anything, but because something inside you was already broken and you didn't know how else to feel whole again. Have you ever crossed a line in your heart long before your body ever did and then told yourself it didn't count? Have you ever stood at the edge of your own life, looked down at the emptiness and thought, anything has to feel better than this? Was I wrong for wanting to feel alive? Or was I just desperate to feel anything at all? I know what I did. I know what it cost. But I also know what it gave me, even if just for a moment. It gave me breath. It gave me softness. It gave me back a part of myself that I hadn't seen in years. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever made a choice that didn't feel like a choice at all? Have you ever touched fire just to remember what warmth feels like? Tell me. Tell me in the comments. Your stories. Your regrets. Your truths. I read every single one. Not to judge. Not to fix. Just to understand. Because stories like this, they don't live in silence. They live in us. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where the confessions don't hide in shame. They echo in the dark. Tap the bell, because the next story might not be mine. It might be yours. Some betrayals don't scream. They whisper. They kiss your forehead like they're tucking you into a safer world, but leave you waking up colder than you've ever been. They don't rip your life apart in one violent motion. They unravel you quietly, thread by aching thread. They feel like home until you realize you've been sleeping in someone else's house. I begged him not to stop, and he didn't. But now I beg myself to start again. To forgive the woman I became in that silence. To learn how to breathe without someone else's hands reminding me how. To live without needing someone else's eyes to tell me I'm still here. Because I am broken, wiser. But here, and maybe that's where healing begins.